22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome to a special edition of the Black Westchester Power Hour. With AJ Woodson and Damon K. Jones. Damon is on. He's still connecting. So I'm going to get right into the show. Today is a special edition. The saga continues. A couple of years ago, a reporter by the name of George Joseph broke a story of a whistleblower, a Mount Vernon police officer who secretly recorded a lot of like 27 hours worth of tapes or something like that of improprieties and corruption or whatever within the Mount Vernon Police Department. The attorney went to the then district attorney, who was Anthony Scarpino, who, you know my feelings on him. He was very ineffective and did nothing as far as police corruption and governmental corruption, so he had to go. So when the attorney couldn't get anywhere with the district attorney, he then went to the press to protect his client. As George Joseph came out here, then working for the Gothamist, to Mount Vernon, and did a great investigative reporting. And let me just say, before we put everybody on the screen, Anthony Scarpino, as a DA, said he could not find witnesses. George Joseph, who was not from Mount Vernon, who knew nobody in Mount Vernon, was able to come to the streets of Mount Vernon by himself, because he came and saw me a few times, but he walked the streets of Mount Vernon, followed up on some leads, and was able to find witnesses and the people that the district attorney could not find. And I find that very interesting when he didn't even know the lay of the land. That says a lot. That says that's why we don't have the district attorney. So moving forward, so these tapes led to the current district attorney, Mimi Rocah, looking into it. One of her campaign promises was that she was going to look into this and she was going to do some sort of investigation. I believe the stories that George Joseph and myself did and Black Westchester led to contributed to the DOJ coming in and investigating the Mount Vernon Police Department, along with Mimi Rocah's recommendations. The DOJ is here investigating with a civil rights investigation of pattern and practices in the Mount Vernon Police Department. And District Attorney Mimi Rocah just announced that she is seeking the overturning of 27 convictions that were partially false arrests and all of that. So, Damon, are you there, Damon? I was going to put you on the screen. I see your background. I don't see you. Okay, yes, he's there. Well, Damon will be with us in a minute. But let me bring in the man of the hour, Mr. George Joseph. How you doing, my brother?
Hey AJ, it's great to be back. A nice Knicks hat. Let's go
Yeah.
Knicks
Oh, yeah.
today.
Well, I've been a Knicks. Yeah, I've been a Knicks fan since the '80s. So a lot of history, and I got to represent.
Finally back.
There was a lot of bad. At least we got a good thing going on right now.
Starks was there yesterday or 2 days ago in the crowd. I don't know if you saw that.
Who?
John Starks was in the.
Oh yeah, he's been at all the games at the Garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yes, you actually started this off. As far as media is concerned, you called me up. You got in contact with me. I wasn't able to get you everybody that you needed to get to. You followed up with others, and you came out here and basically did an investigative report of finding one of the witnesses to corroborate some of the stuff that was on the tape. And again, as I said, you didn't know anybody in Mount Vernon. And it was interesting that you were able to find somebody that the Mount Vernon Police Department and the District Attorney of Westchester could not find.
Yeah, I mean, Mount Vernon obviously isn't a huge place. And for many years before I even started reporting on this, a lot of people were talking about problems with the narcotics unit in Mount Vernon. So I don't want to pretend like I was the first one to discover this, but what I was the first to do was to sort of gather a lot of these accounts and document them in a way that was sort of corroborated by these secret recordings that police officer Murashai Bavel made over several years before I started reporting. So we spoke to numerous residents, some of whom are referenced on the tapes, some of whom were caught up in operations that appear to have been referenced on the tapes. And one of those operations was a drug operation from 2017 that the Mount Vernon Police Department did in conjunction with an undercover officer who appears to have been from the Westchester County Police Department. And that operation I investigated several years ago. And part of that investigation found that one of the men they arrested, named Henderson Clark, who they said was doing a drug deal in Mount Vernon, had evidence from his phone, which we obtained by bringing it to a forensics firm, that he was actually in North Carolina at the time of the supposed drug sale. So we had this company test his phone. It showed that he or someone from his phone had made a search from North Carolina on the morning of that alleged drug sale. And that supported his alibi claim that he was not in Mount Vernon making such a sale. His case was dismissed eventually. But the district attorney's office did not, despite him providing some evidence about being in North Carolina, some sort of thorough investigation at the time, look into this discrepancy and see what was going on. Under District Attorney Anthony Scarpino, they quietly dropped that case, moved on. And that was how I was able to do a story, because there was a clear red flag about this operation. So now, fast forward 3 years later, District Attorney.
I just want to stop you.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to stop you real quick. So, the person that you're talking about, Henderson Clark, our audience is definitely familiar with him, because in 2020, his brother Kamal Flowers was killed by the New Rochelle Police Department, and he has been fighting alongside individuals like Kenneth Chamberlain, who are trying to get justice for their family members. And you've seen him a lot on Black Westchester and out locally at different protests and rallies. So I just wanted to let everybody know, on the street they call him Hendo. So this is the individual we're talking about, and the audience is definitely familiar with him. Go ahead, continue.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So fast forward 3 years later, after campaigning about this issue, District Attorney Mimi Rocah, who beat Anthony Scarpino in part by arguing that he hadn't done very much about these tapes, which his office had been sent by the whistleblower cop several years ago. Her conviction integrity review unit, which she revamped after coming into office, started investigating that operation. We don't know very much of the details, so I'm not going to sort of act like I know exactly what evidence they had and what they looked at. But what they've said in public is that there was very little corroboration about what the undercovers were claiming in terms of viewing or seeing or taking part in these supposed drug sales to people in the area. And we know from the tapes that an officer named Campo claimed that narcotics officers from Mount Vernon were working with a county undercover officer and falsely incriminating people for drug sales that they were not party to. And the district attorney's office believes that those comments that Campo was making were referring to this operation. So after their investigation, because of discrepancies in police paperwork, as well as because of failures by prosecutors to turn over information that would have tended to support the claims of the defendants, District Attorney Rocah's conviction review unit said that they couldn't stand by these 26 convictions and one pending charge that stemmed from this drug operation. And it's important to note, most spent time behind bars, either in jail or state prison, because of these charges. So it is significant, the time they spent and the legal claims they will now be able to file for some potential remuneration following the attempts to purge these convictions, which will now be presented to city court and the county court.
I want to bring in Attorney Joe Murray, who represents Bovell, the whistleblower cop. Welcome to the show, Mr. Murray.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
I wanted you to bring two things. It's interesting. So I had a meeting with the police commissioner on an unrelated matter. I am now the first vice president of the NAACP, and we were meeting with in Mount Vernon, and we were meeting with the police commissioner in the city on public safety in Mount Vernon. And one of the things that was said was that the district attorney found no officers were guilty, which is not the same thing as what you said. It just means that she didn't have enough evidence to go forth and indicting any of them. I'm not saying they are guilty. I'm just saying, you're innocent until proven guilty. But there wasn't enough evidence is not the same thing as they were cleared of everything. And that is the narrative that is being out there. So I wanted to just say that. Joe, take us back to, I think I put it up in the summary in the beginning, but the whole recording, the process, because that's where this all started, with the recording.
Yeah.
The reason your client felt the need to record these, because he was, I guess he was going to superiors and nothing was being done.
Right.
If you can share a bit of that for people that are just playing catch up now.
Sure. Yeah. Just for a little background, police officer Bovell, I think he joined the department in 2007 or 8. He joined the department. He's an immigrant from Jamaica, became a citizen here, and he was somewhat critical of the police and heard about, injustices that have been happening. And some friend of his who was a police officer said, you know what, do something about it, get involved. And he did. He had a prior career in technology and computers. He's a very intelligent person. He joined the police department at Mount Vernon while he was a resident of Mount Vernon. And he started to see in, being a police officer, both sides of the argument. One, as a police officer, trying to do the job, protecting the citizen, protecting and serving. A lot of people miss that second part. It's service that we do. I'm a retired police officer. It's service that we provide the community in addition to the arrests and proactive policing that we do. So he did experience some of the pushback of just being a police officer. And it's, I don't like to digress, but I got to tell you, just as a cop, when you put that uniform on, I'm no longer Joe Murray. He's no longer Murray Bovell. He's Officer Bovell. And you get painted with that broad brush of what every other cop does. So he got to see that side of it, but he also saw indicia of racism, experienced, horrible retaliation. He saw and witnessed brutality. He saw corruption, and it was shocking to him. It was something that this guy walks a different path. I mean, there was no question about his integrity. He would never engage in it. There's a reluctance to come forward when you're a police officer. These are the people you rely upon to come to your aid when you're struggling in the street and you call for help. There's a reluctance, naturally, it's human nature, to then just go out someone, even if you witness them like giving someone a couple extra shots. So there's that hesitation. As a new officer, he experienced that. But then when he started to see this was not a one-off type of thing. This is a pattern in practice. He began reporting it and singing about it, and he suffered the worst retaliation for it. He actually was in the narcotics unit, witnessed this, and left the narcotics unit because of it. He goes, I can't work with these people. Reported it. It was covered up. It was ignored. It was, oh, we'll take care of it. In a small department like this, it's so incestuous. It's very hard to tease that out and police it because everyone knows everyone. We're all kind of interrelated. They're all looking for promotions and better assignments, or they have good assignments and don't want to lose those good assignments. So he really suffered terribly, left the unit. And again, it got so bad that they actually set him up for a bogus fitness for duty exam. This is typical of a whistleblower. Once they start whistleblowing, they try to discredit the message by discrediting the messenger. So they said he's got psych problems. They sent him for a bogus fitness for duty exam that came back and said he was a danger to himself and others. He then had his guns removed. He was put on unpaid leave. And if he wasn't able to correct that condition within a year, he would have been terminated. This is how bad they wanted him off this job. Fortunate for him, he hired a great psychologist. It's so weird how this all is intertwined. Great psychologist, Greg Mack. Greg Mack is a former NYPD officer. He retired as a detective. Greg and I were cops together back in the 80s in Midtown North. He went on to become a psychologist. He worked in the NYPD psych unit. He did the applicant screening. He became an expert in the field of law enforcement and even military and PTSD. So he sought out Greg Mack to help him with this, first of all, the hearing when they removed his firearms. Greg did such an evaluation, a great report. It went to the court. The judge, first of all, the judge kind of laughed at the city and the police department. They said, wait a minute, you have a report that this officer is a danger to himself and others, but you didn't do anything for like 3 months. And now you're taking his guns away? Like, if he was such a danger, why wouldn't it have been done immediately? And then he looked at the credentials of Greg Mack and said, this guy from the NYPD, a retired 20-year veteran himself, expert psychologist, says he's fine. He restored him, gave his guns back, and then we fought the city to get Bovell back, and Bovell got back on. The saga continued. We have definite problems with the administration, definite problems with Glenn Scott. He did not do the right thing. We're very upset with him. We put our faith and trust in him. We gave him the recordings. We had hoped that he would do the right thing, and he didn't. The retaliation continued. However, because of the work of George Joseph, when we were so frustrated, we went to George. And I had met George on another, I think it was the Queen's DA. It was the plea policy, you have to waive. So I met George. I really liked him. And I said, look, I got this thing in Mount Vernon. Can you help with it? Because I know the only way, if they're just stonewalling us, the only way to get them is to embarrass them, to bring this to the public's eye and let the public see what's happening, because they answer to the public. And George did an incredible investigation. I mean, I would swear this guy was a cop. The way he just broke the shoe leather, was out there in the street, talking to witnesses, interviewing everyone. He sourced everything. The most ethical reporter. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And he really brought this in full comprehensive package to the public. And that's what made all the difference. Everyone started running. Okay, let's do this, let's do that. The DA was panicking. Let me just talk Scarpino real quick. Scarpino, he had these recordings and did nothing with them. He opened the drawer and put them in there. Here's the proof. When we then gave the recordings to Glenn Scott had been asking for the recordings from the DA, and he's saying, no, I don't want to compromise the integrity of our investigation. We went to Glenn Scott, and we gave it to him. Glenn Scott, to his credit, the first thing he did was have them transcribed, which is the right thing to do. Transcribe them, give them to your investigators. We could all talk about it. You don't have to keep playing them. So when Anthony Scarpino learned that Glenn Scott transcribed them, he called him and said, hey, I heard you transcribe them. Can you send us those transcripts? Is that not the proof that he did nothing with these recordings? So I'm so glad for George and Black Westchester. You guys rang the bell. You put it out there, and that guy was ousted out of office. And I think in a large part because of the work you put into this, to let the public know how ineffective he has been when it comes to police corruption in Mount Vernon.
And we got involved. We got involved because, you know, a lot of people in Mount Vernon and Westchester are not up on the Gothamist. So George got permission from the Gothamist for us to republish his original article, and you know, crediting them, of course. And then everyone in Westchester got to see it, and everybody, you know, in the city of Mount Vernon got to see it, and then that's when it became even more. And then we did a couple of these where we had, you know, you and George on and explaining the D, because this was like the gift that just kept on giving, you know. Yeah. So it's just like, so that's why I started this with the saga continues. Right. So, and again, I want to credit, you know, as a writer, a reporter, you know, when I read other people's work, you know, you'd be like, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, they could have did a better job. Oh, I could have. When I read his, I was like, wow, this is even the current story. I was like, I got to find a different way to approach this, because I can't just regurgitate everything he said. I gotta hit it from a different angle. Like, he made me be up my game a little bit, because he had this such a thorough,
amazing, and so ethical. He sourced everything. He checked it out and verified it himself. And that, I got to tell you, and I don't want to out George for what he did, but when he confronted officials about these facts, being the person in the room with the most knowledge wins every time. And when he was confronted with responses, George, I shouldn't be talking on your behalf, but, you know, they couldn't out-talk him. He knew the facts. He saw it himself. He verified everything and shut them down. I was just so proud of him for doing that.
Well, thank you both for the kind words. I appreciate it. And, you know, I'd like to add that before Officer Bevell, or around the same time Officer Bevell had first been raising these red flags, various residents in Mount Vernon had attempted to file complaints about some of the narcotics officers in this unit, mirroring the claims that Officer Bevell was making internally. And in addition, Officer Bevell had filed some litigation earlier and had also spoken to people in the department about it. So, you know, he had tried to raise these claims. Citizens had tried to raise the claims. The department and the district attorney's office did very little in response, and action only happened after it became public.
One of the reasons that, again, with my other hat, with the NAACP, we're fighting tooth and nail for there to be a citizen complaint review board. It's definitely there. I don't know if we have one in Westchester at all, but, you know, we definitely need one. And I wanted to say one other thing. You know, I covered, fortunately, a lot of the cases where, you know, people were protesting after George Floyd and all of that stuff. And all over the country, several of the things that people are fighting for, the city of Mount Vernon has. One, they're fighting for more leadership, persons of color in leadership positions. This is basically a Black-run government. You know, they were fighting for more persons of color in leadership and the law and law enforcement. Mount Vernon is the only municipality in Westchester to have a Black commissioner. And the other thing that everyone and every protest said we want. Everybody kept saying there's always just a few bad apples, and everybody's like, well, where's the good apples at? Why don't the good cops speak up against the bad cops? And that wasn't going on anywhere. And we even had that situation, and he wasn't protected. He was even, ridiculed at what do you call roll call? All of these people are fighting for this, that are fighting for criminal justice, are fighting for what the city of Mount Vernon already has in an area that is 4.2 square miles. And I just wanted to bring, I wanted to bring that into full circle. Which
it's
is
so true, AJ. I mean, you have this microcosm here, this city of Mount Vernon, and everything you described, which is happening nationally and internationally, everything you described happened here. And you have, the Super Bowl of whistleblowers right here in your department. Nobody, not the commissioner, not the mayor, nobody has to this day embraced him for the courageous act of coming forward with this material. He suffered tremendous damage because of this. People wouldn't talk to him. They were putting rats in front of his locker. Their boss called him a rat at roll call, and everyone laughed. That just shows the institutional bias against anyone coming out to speak the truth about misconduct. It's disgusting. I'm a retired police officer. I am so proud of my service. I get so fired up, and so does Greg Mack, when we see actions like this that discredit our former occupation, our former profession. So I worked so hard to try to bring light to this. And that's why you guys have been so wonderful. And Jesse Van Loo and Atef, and Kenneth Chamberlain, all of you coming to every one of those protests. We could not have done it without you. Everyone, George, you guys, Black Westchester. It's so important what you do. I loved reading your book and hearing the story, how it came to be. And,
thank you.
Damon saying, I'm tired of them taking the little snippet of the protests or the press conference. He was like, no. I want to control the message. So more power.
I wanted
to
to add to what Joe was saying. Unless people in the public support local media, these kind of stories can't come out. To have the microphone of Black Westchester amplifying the reporting we did was really important, so that people in the community got to see it. And this stuff, you can't do this job for free. Reporting costs money. So please, if you can, definitely support local media like blackwestchester.com, because that's how people get held accountable who are in power. If they just get to do whatever they want without anyone scrutinizing them and calling them on BS, then they will continue to do that. So I just want to congratulate you and Damon on keeping this venture alive, and also on your new book, AJ.
Thank you. I also want to say, and I should not have to say this, me and Damon should not have to say this 9 years later. We are not anti-police. This is not meant to beat up on police. We're anti-bad cop. That's and so secondly, there is an election going on right now. This is not in any way to sway people to one person or against another person. It just happened that this came out at the time in the middle of the election. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. So, for those, let's get all that out the way. You know what I'm saying? Nobody is beating up on anybody and trying to make way for another person or anything like that. This is what is actually going on now. So I just wanted to get that out there. And there are a lot of good men and women in the Mount Vernon Police Department. Damon's married to one of them. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to say that, I have a good relationship with some of them, and I don't want this to be taken out of context. This is a matter of sharing what's going on and reporting the facts. this is what's going on right now. So, I unfortunately, again, I shouldn't still. As you can hear, it's warm. The motorcycles is going by, the dirt bike. So you gotta excuse me. We shouldn't have to still say that 9 years later, but we get accused of being anti-cop and defund the police and all that BS gets attributed to us. That's not what this is. This is reporting the news. So enough of that. So George. Well, I see Damon. Damon is in his car. I don't know, Damon. Do you have a question or you comment? You want to get involved in the conversation in any way?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, what's happening, man? It's good to see y'all guys, man. It's good to see y'all.
Same here.
I just want to congratulate y'all on the work that you've done. I mean, this is historic in Westchester County. I think Scarpino should be some type of federal investigation on Scarpino in blocking these investigations and turning a blind eye to crime. Listen, everybody knows my wife's a cop. And if you know my family, I come from a long line of law enforcement on my father's side and my mother's side. So I take it personal, because I was always taught to strive for perfection and do my job. So at the end of the day, when you see officers not acting professionally and actually violating people, you could gaff off at the job, but when you're violating people, you're violating people's rights, you're messing up people's livelihoods, criminal records, not being able to get jobs, some take people's lives, abuse people. It can't be like that. No matter what, no matter what color, you are, and like AJ said, we was never anti police. We was actually pro professional police to be around our community and our children, and I think it's crazy if any officer is caught up in his feelings about what conversation that we're having right now. I really don't care, because that's your feelings, and if you don't believe in policing a community professionally and doing the job that you sworn to do, then maybe you need to transfer out of the city and go to corporate America or something like that. You don't need to be in law enforcement. Law enforcement is an occupation of service, right? It's not about how many guns you get off the street. It's about service and foremost. And I think this culture has got it twisted to the point that we forgot about that we're serving the people, right? We're not keeping the people in a police state, especially communities that are black and brown and poor. So, hey, Brother Murray, man, good work. You stood up. You stood up to the politicians. You stood up to everybody, and you protected your client. And we don't see a lot of that in lawyers around.
You guys gave me the microphone though, and you created the lens to draw this into focus. It was not in focus. You and George, you guys couldn't have done it without you.
No, it's great, man. Congratulations. I really hope that Mimi, the Westchester DA, looks deeper into the obstruction from those who are the different levels of the criminal justice. Because it was totally insane. And Scarpino is probably the worst DA Westchester has ever had and will ever have. And it's just sad that a system that people try to trust and want to trust turned a blind eye to a lot of things. Not just that, but it was so many other things that the Scarpino and the people that was working for him just turned a blind eye, just didn't care. you know, and then blocked other investigations. If the state wanted to come in or the feds wanted to come in, they blocked those investigations. You know, it's really sad, and I hope he never think about running for any type of elected office ever again.
Well, you know, just to follow what you said, you know, I also represent Congressman George Santos, right? And I only bring this up for one reason. He's being attacked under this new indictment, and part of the allegations are there's some campaign finance and election, not election fraud, but that he fraudulently, whatever. I don't want to go into all the details of it, but what I'm saying is, I do believe Anthony Scarpino, because he was posturing himself for re-election, he did not want some scandal like this to be revealed in right before his election. And I think that should be looked at by the Department of Justice. Just because he's out does not absolve him of what he did. I think he needs to be scrutinized and looked at the specific things he did or didn't do. That's his oath of office. As a district attorney, you take an oath. And I think the Department of Justice needs to go beyond this pattern of practice and look at what the former district attorney did or didn't do.
I want to bring up one thing about the Department of Justice investigation, which is that they're investigating the Mount Vernon Police Department practice of strip searches and body cavity searches. We reported on that practice back in 2020 when we got video footage of officers in Mount Vernon going into an apartment and doing strip searches and what appeared to be body cavity searches in the apartment, despite the fact that Mount Vernon police rules at the time clearly stated that strip searches are supposed to be done at police headquarters and anal cavity searches are supposed to be done by a doctor, which was clearly not happening on video. So that those practices, which by law, you know, are supposed to be very narrowly constrained by certain civil rights protections, are under review by the Department of Justice. And I'm curious as a reporter as to what they're going to find about how widespread that practice is or was.
Well, this should also be, you know, a signal, a red flag for all departments to now look internally at what happened here, because let's talk about the narcotics in any department. The clientele that you interact with in the Narcotics Bureau are the most disenfranchised people in the world. They're the most discredited, unbelievable, and that becomes abused at times from the officers because then they take certain liberties. It's your word against mine. You know what I mean? Like that type of philosophy gets into their heads. And that's what Bovell revealed, that they were lying on search warrant affidavits and things like that, making stuff up. And the logic was, who are they going to believe, him or me? A junkie who's been convicted 3 times or 4 times of narcotics violations, or an officer? Every department should look at their narcotics. This is not a one-off. This is incestual with all departments in the Narcotics Bureau because of the imbalance. You're dealing with the most disenfranchised people in the world in the narcotics unit.
Real quick. So there is a limited series on one of the cable net. I don't know if it's HBO, Showtime, Netflix. It's called We Run the City. Everybody should look at that. It's the specialized unit in the Baltimore Police Department leading up to Freddie Gray. And then the aftermath afterwards. That's the time frame. And the main person that was head of that unit said, we basically have a free pass to do whatever we want as long as we bring in the big numbers and guns and money and drugs. You know what I'm saying? As long as we keep bringing that in, we can basically do, because we run the city, which is the name of the thing. So I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but that's a good thing to watch. And before George, there is a question for you. Since you covered this, I just got text. The DA found a reason to ask for overturning the convictions of the people that were convicted. What, if anything, can be done to the officers who are the guilty in the situation. Do you know if you came across in your reporting or anything like that?
Well, I just want to make a clarification from earlier when I was talking about the video footage we got. It showed strip searches, and one man from that incident alleged there was a body cavity search. Some of the things you could hear could make you raise questions about whether that indeed happened. So I just wanted to clarify.
Right, you can hear it, you couldn't see it.
You couldn't see
it. There was the audio of it when it was allegedly going on, because I got the same video.
So I just wanted to clarify that. Could you? And then one other thing about these specialized units. The specialized unit that you were referring to in Baltimore, that's the subject of that TV series, was found to have been going around and sometimes robbing people who they knew had money, right? Because if you interact with people who are drug dealers, you can know, oh, they're going to have a lot of cash and they can't report it if it's stolen, right? In Mount Vernon, there were allegations that the narcotics unit, which civilians filed, and which Officer Vobel also filed internally, were robbing residents allegedly in some of their street encounters. So I just wanted to flag that, given that you brought that up. I
didn't know that was current, but I know that there, and people could look this up, back in the 90s or the late 80s, there was a situation where people went to jail, including former county executive Rob Astorino's father.
Correct.
Who was an officer at the time.
They took a duffel bag, I believe it was, of cash that the FBI had planted, and were caught on video stealing that money. Yes. With regards to what happens to the officers, at the time when I was reporting on this series back from my previous publication, Gothamist, in response to the reporting, or on the heels of the reporting, the Mount Vernon Police Department shut down the narcotics unit. And they also put one officer on desk duty, at least for some time, and one officer was suspended, at least for some time. Now, AJ, since you spoke to the commissioner more recently than me, you may know more about this, but in their press release after the convictions news came out, they referred to firing an officer and also putting one on desk duty. So I don't know if you have more information that might answer the listener's question.
So both the PBA president, and who released a statement on Facebook, and the police commissioner, who I actually had a meeting with about public safety, not this, yesterday, said that no one was fired and no one was put on desk duty. But I do know that while the DA didn't mention names, it was supposed to be Antonini who was put on desk duty, and it was supposed to be Campos who fired. I believe Campos is no longer with the Mount Vernon Police Department. Damon could probably confirm that better than I can. You're on mute. You're on mute, Damon. You're on mute. Yeah. You muted yourself again. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I just don't understand that nobody was put on desk duty, and you had 48 hours, and I know some of the cops, but at the end of the day, from a management perspective, people will have to be put on desk duty, because that's them talking about other cops doing things, and it behooves me, right? It's really unthinkable, how it all went down. There's no accountability, and I know, I know the commissioner well, but at the end of the day, like they tell us in corrections, they're not worried about your morale. Your morale comes every 2 weeks. That's your morale. Your morale comes every 2 weeks. It's about policy, procedure, training, and the budget, right? That's all the commissioner is worried about: policy, procedure, training, and staying under the budget. So the worry about, if I do that, I'm going to hurt people's morale. They get a check every 2 weeks. That's their morale. They can pay their bills. They can put their kids in school. That's their morale. But other than that, the supervisors and the people in management should be making sure that these officers are following policies, procedures, and training. Now, if these things are outside those scopes, then there should be a problem. It must be a problem. So, and I think, and one more thing while I'm on the highway and I'm able to talk, I think the people that are watching, the citizens in all these cities, you got to hold your elected officials accountable. You really do. Because politicians are scared to make change in law enforcement. I don't understand for what reason. Their budget is paid by the taxpayers. And if the taxpayers are being violated, then there should be some correction. We're still waiting on a lot of the municipalities on civilian complaint review boards. And when Yonkers Police Department was invested by the DOJ, they said their whole policy book was just copied and paste, right? So usually you're not going to see any type of change from any of them because they all copy each other. They all copy each other. I've been talking this for over 30 years. They all copy each other. So what's infected in Mount Vernon? It's probably infected in Yonkers and White Plains and Greenburgh and Port Chester and Rye and in the county police because nobody has the balls to change it. They're all scared. And that's why things never change.
George Joseph.
Oh, I just had another question in case, AJ, you knew anything from your meeting. I asked the city because after the convictions news, they put out a statement. Sean Patterson Howard, the mayor, specifically said that she had hired a special prosecutor to investigate officers accused of misconduct and, quote, has actively pursued charges against Mount Vernon officers who betrayed the public's trust. So what does charges mean from a mayor's special prosecutor?
I don't know. The person, the attorney in general, his name is William Wagstaff.
Does it mean departmental charges?
Because that's all that he could do is recommend. I believe recommend charges to departmental. Yeah, I don't know if he couldn't because only the DA, because the DA's office came out. I have to find the story and send it to you, a statement from the DA. Her office said that only her office can recommend, bring charges. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So it would have to be departmental charges.
I'm asking you because the city hasn't responded to me.
No. Hey, that was
you're not the wait.
Tiger.
You're not only the only one. LoHUD did a FOIL article on FOIL requests throughout the county. And I can send you the link to that too. I have to dig it up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mount Vernon was the slowest in responding to FOIL requests. And at the time of the story, there was some FOIL requests that were over a year or so old that still had not been responded to yet. And that's out of all the 43 municipalities of Westchester, Mount Vernon was the slowest. And so don't take it personal. It wasn't just you.
Can I just jump in real quick? I want to say something. I give Glenn Scott credit where I see credit. I call balls and strikes. When he made transcripts and did that and told us that the DA didn't even have them and wanted them, I give him credit 100%. But for him to say, I disbanded the narcotics unit as if that's a good thing, I disagree, because what he did is he disbanded the narcotics unit and he created a violent crimes unit, and he put most of those officers in the violent crimes unit. So they were still out there in plain clothes doing their job, essentially going to the same people and same haunts and same kind of targets that they were targeting. In my opinion, I believe that's what happened. I discredit it because as much as narcotics could be corrupted because of the disenfranchisement of the clientele you deal with, it is an essential unit in every police department. The narcotics that are out there, especially today with the fentanyl, are deadly. They're deadly on contact. We see people just coming in contact, dropping on the floor, passing out, even cops touching something with fentanyl on it and absorbing it through their skin. It is so dangerous and deadly. To disband your narcotics unit, in my opinion, is completely reckless, and it's the wrong approach. Not everyone in that narcotics unit was corrupt. Maybe they were not singing the whistle and ringing the bell, but they're doing the job the way it should be done, and they should not all be treated with that broad stroke. Similarly, if you're going to single someone out and take them out, you put them behind a desk because you're afraid they're hurting people and they're infringing on people's rights. You don't just take them out of a unit and let them go in the same neighborhood and victimize the same people. So I discredit that reaction. That is a bad reaction. You're hurting the community by disbanding a very important and essential function of this police department.
I do want to say, so since he is not here to speak for himself, if he decides that he wants to respond, we will give him the equal time to respond to anything that is said with his name mentioned involved. So, just in fairness. But one of the things that, when Scarpino got the tapes, he was saying that he couldn't do anything because it was hearsay. And I was like, well, can't you bring the people in? Isn't that enough to bring the people in that are on the tape to have them tell you what's going on the record? Well, obviously, Mimi Rocah did do that, and she has 2 reports, and they're both in my story. You can read the report in entirety. It says that they the officers who were heard saying certain things on the tape then recanted what was said when they were in the DA's office. And no knock on our new DA, and I'm asking from a layman's perspective, if is that enough to push more on that person because they are saying something on tape, even if that's not an official record, push more, you know what I'm saying? Like almost get them for not telling the truth, or if they're admitting these things happened and they were involved, threatening to charge them if they don't be forthright. I thought that would be maybe an approach that should have been taken that wasn't taken. And again, I'm speaking as a layperson. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a prosecutor. You know what I'm saying? So that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to compromise any investigation that may be ongoing. We don't know, and she shouldn't announce and say that it's done because you're telegraphing that to the possible wrongdoers. But there's so many other ways to conduct an investigation. George Joseph illustrated how you do an investigation that doesn't involve talking to the cops. You talk to the people. You talk to the people they arrested. You talk to the witnesses when you find out the location of the arrest. You talk to, there's so many resources today, the technology about cameras, and there's so many ways to do this. And then there's also confidential sources. A lot of these narcotics guys were using CIs who are registered. Let's reach out to them and talk to them and see what's going on. So I don't want to compromise any investigation. I'm just throwing out a general approach that is obviously available and still accessible. But to say that, these were hearsay, I can't do anything with it, that's a
that
lie.
That was Scarpino that said
that. Yes, that is a lie.
I always want to draw that line because even in the meeting yesterday, the commissioner was saying the DA, but we were talking about Scarpino, not the current DA, and everybody in the room didn't know that. So I just want to be clear.
The police and the DA have means of investigation that they can use to do further this investigation. They both have it available. Whether or not they're using it, like I said, it could be happening, and I don't want the wrongdoers to know that it's not happening. It possibly is happening. Let them think and have it over their shoulder.
Well, the one thing I can say, again, and I don't have all the ins and outs of everything that's going on, and a district attorney, the one thing I've gotten from district attorney, not just Mimi Rocah, but other good district attorneys, they don't announce what they're doing. So, just because you don't know there's an investigation does not mean that you're not being investigated. And I do know that they are in contact with the attorneys of those who were, I guess, wrongfully convicted that they're trying to get overturned. They are in conversation. I don't know what that looks like, but there is some kind of dialogue going on now what comes from that, we can't even I won't speculate, but I'm just,
Yeah, like I'm not revealing any secret means or sources, whatever. I'm just speaking the obvious, But yes, that is the right approach. There are so many people you could be talking to that could give you information. And what you do is you interview everyone separately and you see what the results are. And you start to see the pattern lining up. So, and then there's integrity tests. It's utilized by every department. That's something cops always fear. Is this an integrity test? And it works.
I just want to bring up that a lot of the reporting for this story came from going through arrest records and any defendant name I could find online or in the court record, seeing who had pled to drug charges or who had been arrested or had criminal complaints signed off on by narcotics officers, and then going and finding those people and then talking to them. And they often would know about other people who had been arrested by the narcotics unit. So there are dozens of people that I spoke to for that reporting that are in Mount Vernon or Westchester County. And there are many more that I didn't speak to and who any law enforcement agency would have the means and resources to speak to more than I did as an individual.
And a lot of people come forward because even when we did the story of legendary R&B singer Jeff Redd being racially profiled in a car, sitting in a car across the street from his house. While we were doing the interview, people were in the comment section. That's the same cop that did it to me. That's the same cop that did it to me. That's the same cop that did it to me. You know what I'm saying? Like this was like live while we were on the air. Like people were saying, like, and when we, and one of our things, a couple of people, Henderson Clark was one of them, who was texting me, that's the same officer that I had a problem with. And a few other people were like, that's the same officer, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes, and so in other words, they were saying this and their names was shown in the comment section. They obviously were not shy from speaking if somebody speak to them. You know what I'm saying? They obviously wasn't hiding or it wasn't that they wouldn't speak, so.
It's true too, AJ. I just want to throw in there. Bovell has told me out on patrol, he's been approached by both people on both sides of the fence, the good citizens who commend him for the actions he's took, and also, the guys who are playing, on the other side of the fence. And they're like, you know what? Thank you for doing what you did, because they know this happens to them. And he spoke up on their behalf, so he's getting feedback, which is all positive from the community.
George, I want to give you anything we did not talk about that was in your reporting or in this case that, I wanted to make sure we got to that before we end. Is there anything?
The only thing that I think we didn't mention was that a lot of the people who were drug dealers that I spoke to, and this is sort of corroborated by things that Officer Bovell reported from his colleagues on tape, were alleging that the narcotics unit was engaging in a general scheme in which they allied with certain drug dealers who gave them help with low-level arrests and punished those that didn't cooperate with them, not giving them territory, not allowing them to do whatever they wanted with impunity, instead going after them. So the allegation was that they were playing favorites in the street, and it was to such a dramatic extent, allegedly, that on tape, Officer Campo referred to arresting a known drug dealer who was helping them with arrests, finding that he had crack on his person, and allegedly Campo said on tape that at the direction of a detective in the car, he took that crack and put it in his shoe so that when they processed the man and gave him a DAT ticket, they kept the crack for him and gave it back to him. That's what Officer Campo said.
Right,
so
that's on the tape, because I've heard
he didn't know he was being recorded. He said that. So I just want people to understand the alleged extent to which the narcotics unit was allegedly working with drug dealers on a day-to-day basis like this.
Well, I also think that you have to start looking at policy A lot of police departments, I think, are putting in the duty to intercede, right? So it is the officer's responsibility if he sees another officer not follow policy, procedure, training, or doing something that's not right, to intercede that officer. I think it should just not be left to use of force, because a lot of police departments just stick it into the use of force policy, and instead of making it an actual, this is policy that covers code of conduct, right? So these police departments have to revisit, and if they did have a policy like that, then they would be able to hold those officers more accountable, because they were seeing things that shouldn't have happened, and you turn a blind eye, but actually you shouldn't turn the blind eye. And we've seen that police departments that do have it, their officers act on it. There was one report in one state. It was a sheriff and a state trooper, and the state trooper was abusing his authority, and the sheriff arrested him, put cuffs on the state trooper. You can't do that around me, because I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about if they find that out and they found I was standing there, I'm going to get it worse than you. So we have to have that type of accountability. A lot of these police departments in Westchester County are making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money. So there should be some type of accountability with that money. It should be some type of professionalism with that money.
To make your case, we had a guest on the show, was it in Buffalo, a black woman, a female officer, who did stop her partner, or the person she was riding with, from abusing a suspect who was already handcuffed. Huh?
She stopped him from choking him.
Right. And he was handcuffed and everything. She stopped him. She intervened, and she was fired or suspended?
She ended up getting fired 3 months before she was able to retire. And she fought, and she got her pension, but then it's hung up in court because the officer ended up suing her. And I think he won some type of judgment, and then that's on appeal. But she did what she was supposed to do. She stopped this officer from choking a man in cuffs, and she was the one that ended up getting fired.
And that's why I said I'm agreeing.
Carolyn Horn.
Right, and that's further proof that we need this in the policies and procedures to protect those type of officers, to protect the Officer Bovels, to protect those who do speak up and who do intervene. You know what I mean? And again, a lot of us first heard about that in the George Floyd case, because those officers got in trouble for failure to intervene when they were standing there watching him. You know what I'm saying? So but that's in use. Like you said,
but also you got to be trained too, right? So like, the George Floyd thing, them guys had 6 months on the job.
And that was their field training officer.
And he was a field training officer. So, like, who's training these guys to intervene? Who's training these guys to tell the senior officer, right? Because look, I'm the most senior man in my building. Ain't no officer telling me what to do, right? Because that's the culture, right? That's the culture, Joe. You got 30 some odd years over an officer. He barely shouldn't even be talking to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Watching and listening.
Exactly. So to end up trying to tell an officer like that, yo, man, you're doing wrong, man, the culture itself. And that's why we always talk about the culture. Like you have to have people in place that understands the culture and that are able to create policy to adapt that culture. Because if you're on the outside and you don't know the culture, a lot of these civil rights lawyers don't know the culture, and that's why a lot of like the George Floyd bill has a lot of people are pushing it, and it is what it is, but it has a lot of flaws because they don't understand the actual culture. And that's why we got to continue to try to educate a lot of these civil rights people, about the culture. It's just not police brutality, having marches, Black Lives Matter, and all that. And you're not understanding the legislation. You're not understanding the policies. You're not understanding procedures, and you're not even understanding the culture that's with around it. And this is why we keep running in circles. And sooner or later, we're going to get it right. Sooner or later.
I want to stop right there. I know George has to go soon, and I wanted to give him any last words, anything we didn't ask you, anything you want to add to the conversation before you go.
No, I just wanted to say thank you again for the time. It's always a pleasure to come on to Black Westchester and encourage viewers and listeners. Please support your local media. Please support Black Westchester. We need a independent media to be able to hold people in power accountable. I will note that one of the reasons I first got interested in this story was because when I was talking to Joe and I had looked up Officer Bevell, I noticed in lowhud.com just a very small reference to some of Bevell's allegations about sketchy things going on with the narcotics unit. I thought, oh, there must be something more there. It sounds like a pretty interesting allegation. We should investigate this. And so you need local media outlets like Black Westchester to be putting scrutiny on people in power, whether they be police department, mayors, district attorneys, whoever. So I'd just like to commend all of you, Damon and AJ, on keeping this going. And it's important to have media that's grounded in the community to get those tips and to hold local power players accountable.
Can I just ask, George, what are you doing now, and how do we get you back over here?
Well, I live in New York City, so I work for a news outlet called The City, which is similar to The Gothamist, but less regional. We just cover the city, so that's why I haven't been around covering Westchester as much, but it does have a special place for my heart, and always happy to come back and good to be with all of you.
You're covering more Brooklyn now, right? Is that
I was covering Brooklyn a lot. I'm doing a lot on housing, and recently we had a big investigation about partition schemes in which speculators find distant heirs, buy fractions of properties from those heirs for very little money, and then use an obscure New York law called partition action to demand money from homeowners or threaten them with a forced sale, which is often happening in Black neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And I'm sure it could be happening up here as well. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Lastly, shout out to your wife. She was out here. She introduced herself. She was working on a tenant rights rally, and she was working with someone in our family, Lorraine Lopez, and they put together this big rally and stuff. And she introduced herself. So shout out to her and the work that she's doing as well. Yes.
All right. Good to see all of you.
Yes. Same here, man.
So we'll talk later.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye, Damon.
All right, take care, bro. Take care.
So, Joe, any last words from you? And me and Damon joked, and me and you joked about this before we got on the air. If your current client,
right, they need to come on the air, man.
We will definitely have a conversation with
I will make it happen. Bring
him on the show, man.
My parting words. This was it was a great read. It was a great read. I love to hear the history of the two of you getting together, your music production company that you had initially. And that I love the logic that Damon is like, wait a minute, they're only putting this out. I want this out. And that's what you did. I mean, more power to you. Great job.
Thank you. Anything that we didn't bring up that you want to add as far as Officer Bovell's tapes, the investigation, the current status of the process of possibly getting these cases overturned, anything that you want to add? I know that you said in the article, I may have been George Joseph's article, this action by the DA vindicates your client. If you want to elaborate more on that.
I do want to elaborate more on that because as much as, look, I support, Glenn Scott is a career police officer. He rose through the ranks and became commissioner. My hat's off to him. He could probably teach me more than he knows more than I forgot, or vice versa, whatever.
He forgot more than you know.
He forgot more than I know.
Right.
But I have to call the balls and strikes. He came in. I thought we were going to get justice. He was going to work to do this, protect the public. That's his job. Unfortunately, he turned the guns on my client as well. He was criticizing him, defaming him on the department's website. I have no idea why he would do that. The simplest thing I wanted from him or the mayor, the simplest thing, take the bullseye off his back. Take that bullseye off his back. When he was called a rat at roll call, it wasn't like, that's frowned upon. Don't do that. They all laughed. And it was just the culture to make fun of someone who speaks truth to power, who comes out and reports corruption. All I asked is, look at the investigative work he did. Look at how he exposed himself. He put himself in harm's way and suffered a lot because of what he did. Acknowledge him, the mayor. Acknowledge him for what he did. And I asked a very simple thing at the time. Give him a gold shield. That will tell the whole department, hands off. This guy did the right thing. Let's support him for what he did so that others who are in the same position as Murashay Bovell, thinking about, I got to say something about this, but I don't want to suffer, that'll send the right message. Hey, if you're doing the right thing and you're helping us improve this department, we're going to recognize you for that. And I always use that Serpico analogy only because everyone knows the story. But that's essentially what he did. He put himself out there, and had to worry when he needed help. Is it going to come? So I really just want the public to know that you got to support people like that. Whistleblowers who come out to do the right thing. He had no agenda. That was his only issue. I want to be proud of my department. I like what I do. I like being a police officer. Don't discredit me. And again, it's cliche, but there are so many good cops. My comments about the narcotics team, that was a big mistake, Glenn Scott. We need a narcotics team. Fentanyl is killing our kids. They have to be out there. They have to be fighting. And there are good cops who are doing a good job. There were a few that needed to be sidelined. Bench them, retrain them. If they're really committing crimes, lock them up. Don't just put them in another unit and say, hey, look what I did. I disbanded it right away. That's my 2 cents. Sorry. Thank you.
No doubt. The thing, I just want to say the Serpico thing, that wasn't missed on me as well. And putting things into black and white. He was a white man. And that's what happened to him.
Yeah.
Being a black man, you know what I'm saying? You're more in danger. So I was seriously worried about something like that happening to him. Now, lastly, I think he eventually did get a promotion. What is Officer Bovell still with the
he's sergeant now.
He was promoted to sergeant, but he was never recognized for what he did. If I was the mayor, I would give him a key to the city. Thank you for putting yourself in harm's way. She's never done anything like that. It was a simple token of appreciation to give him that gold shield. It took years, and he took the civil service test and was promoted on his own. It's not like they gave him anything. So I'm really disappointed about that.
Damon, last words on the topic, and then we out of here.
Nah, man, I think, hey, Joe, man, you did a great job, man. Love to see how you fight. Love to see lawyers that do the work, that hit the street, that speak up for their clients, man. I think, Bovell is blessed to have you as a lawyer.
Thank you.
We just got to continue to fight, man. We just got to continue. Law enforcement is a beautiful profession, and there's only usually there's only a few, but the many just allow it to happen, and then we all look like shit.
Yeah.
And
I don't understand why we don't see that.
True.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This will be available on the website shortly, and you can watch it in its entirety. I do want to give a shout out to my former intern, Olivia Barrios Johnson. She's graduating from Quinnipiac University. She just studied abroad. She's doing great things. And she got an internship with somebody in the city. And hopefully she'll still be doing some stuff with us in her spare time. But I wanted to shout her out. And yeah, this has been the latest update in the saga of the secret tapes, or as we refer to them, the Bovell tapes. Yeah. And I believe that, and I put at the bottom of my report, stay tuned to Black Westchester for more on this developing story. I do believe that this is not the end of it, that there is much more to come. Again, if Glenn Scott would like to have his say or felt that he wanted to respond to anything, he is welcome to respond. You know how to reach us. And other than that, I just want to say, let's go Knicks, and I'm out.
All right,
Fight
Joe.
continues.
All right.